Climate change is a critical issue that affects all of us. It has become a global hot topic. But why does a sense of apathy persist when it comes to individual responsibility? Could our perceptions of technology be our Achilles heel in our fight against climate change? Hello everyone, in this video, I'm going to discuss this crucial topic and address how we can and should work together to resolve it. So, a fundamental paradox of climate change is that while we are often reminded that it is an urgent issue, that doesn't seem to be how we experience it in our daily lives. In reality, our relationship with climate change is like the parable of the boiled frog. If the frog is suddenly put into hot water, it would be shocked and jump out immediately. But if the frog is put into room temperature water, which is then slowly brought to a boil, the frog will fail to realize the increasing temperature and eventually gets boiled alive. It's a gruesome childhood story that uncannily resembles what we are all experiencing with climate change. Well, modern life is complex, right? Each of us has our personal challenges to deal with, family, finances, work, and so on. And there is also this constant bombardment of information, marketing pitches, narratives, counter-narratives that we've all learned to tune out on a daily basis to preserve our sanity. So much so that there's almost no capacity for something that may or even will affect us for another 20 or 30 years. It just seems too far away. Adding to that, there is also a common belief that everything will turn out fine, that someone else will take care of it. Now, today, we can observe people pressuring governments and corporations to take on commitments to decarbonize. And for the most part, that is a positive outcome. But on the flip side, it also seems like a convenient excuse to put all responsibility and blame on the governments and on the corporations and absolve ourselves of any individual responsibility. But is that the right way to approach it? On the one hand, as individuals, we may feel powerless to do anything of significance to fight something as large as climate change. But on the other hand, energy is a commodity that we are all guilty of consuming, right, to provide us with the comforts of modern life. So if most people have this attitude that others will solve it, how will we ever solve climate change? Recently, it dawned upon me that a good part of this complacency may stem from our misperceptions of technology. Think about it this way. Our objective here is to reduce global CO2 emissions, which can be thought of as a product of three key factors. One, the global population. Some people believe that the world should have less people. But I think that's not the approach we should be taking to decarbonize. It's a contentious issue and we'll park it aside. Right, the second factor is how much energy each person uses on average. Obviously, if we want to decarbonize, a very effective way is to consume less energy and be more efficient, right? But this means that each individual and collectively, we must all sacrifice. We have to cut down on discretionary consumption, travel less, use less air conditioning, basically enjoy less of the comforts of modern life. Unfortunately, this message has little public appeal. We all love our quality of lives and it's hard to cut back meaningfully at a societal level. Which brings us to the third factor, the carbon intensity of the energy we consume. And this plays right into the type of technology we employ to produce and deliver energy into our economies. And because technology has solved so many problems in the world and has so rapidly and overwhelmingly improved our quality of life, we tend to take for granted that technology surely also should be able to solve climate change in no time, shouldn't it? Now, and we saw how these expectations played out like a roller coaster over the last 3 years. First, the pandemic hit us. Energy demand fell, as well as CO2 emissions. At the same time, technology stocks skyrocketed, right, fueling the belief that the technology revolution was going to finally make fossil fuels obsolete. Energy companies pivoted towards a greater emphasis on low-carbon technologies, some more than others. And many of us expected or hoped that 2020 was indeed a turning point, a blessing in disguise to turn the corner on fossil fuels. However, fast forward 3 years and our fossil fuel consumption today is right back on track to hitting new highs year after year. Energy companies all reported record profits for 2022 and are reorganizing themselves for a balanced energy transition. And that means continuing to invest in today's energy system, which is basically oil and gas, while steadily increasing investments into low carbon alternatives. Have we been fooled by the energy companies? Some seem to believe so. And again, maybe that's a convenient way to absolve ourselves from responsibility. Let's all gang up and throw tomatoes, right? Unfortunately, if we keep going on the war of narratives, who's right, who's wrong, we will miss the bigger picture. That is, we cannot afford to have unrealistic expectations that technology alone will be the solution, and instead recognize the energy transition for what it is. One which will take time, effort, resources, and sacrifice. We must realize that our experience with computers and software has somewhat shaped our beliefs on what technology can do for us. We now come to expect that computing technology will become cheaper and better. And the value proposition is always improving, that adopting technology has become a no-brainer, right? And it's all thanks to Moore's law, which states that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles every 2 years, resulting in exponential performance improvements at the same cost or lower cost, right? But the problem with this perception is that technologies for climate change are not like microchips. Neither are they software that can be scaled up and distributed digitally over the internet. Instead, technologies for climate change are more like equipment and hard infrastructure assets. While this appears to be stating the obvious, the fact that costs of renewables had declined exponentially in the last decade has muddled rational minds and reinforced the widespread belief that perhaps climate technologies may, just like microchips, right, continue to become exponentially cheaper and or more productive because of improvements in technology. However, the cost reduction in renewables over the past decade can largely be explained by factors such as declining interest rates and falling fossil fuel energy costs, not just advancements in technology. And the recent increase in the cost of funding and commodity prices has shown us that the cost of renewables is not always going to decrease, and we should not have unrealistic expectations of perpetual cost reductions. Now, if we want to develop meaningful clean energy solutions to solve the climate crisis starting today, we have to be objective about our goals and not be fixated only on ideological solutions. For example, besides renewables, we already have technologies for CO2 capture and permanent storage, or CCS, as a cost-effective approach to dealing with CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. Now, to explain how CCS can be effective, if you think about it, the part that's bad about fossil fuels is the release of CO2 that used to be in the ground, and now you're releasing that into the atmosphere. Now, if we can process that fossil fuels before we use them, strip the carbon and put it back into the ground, what we're left with is a zero carbon energy molecule, right? It's a hydrogen or a derivative of hydrogen that when consumed emits no CO2. Therefore, if we stay objective, our technology options expand vastly. And beyond technologies, we should also focus on developing new supply chains for clean energy, because energy is not just about producing it, but also how we store, convert, and transport it to our final end user. And that's the logistics part of it, right? And we also have to develop the markets for clean electrons and molecules. So to put this into perspective, perhaps you've heard about how electricity can be generated from solar PV at less than 2 cents per kilowatt hours in some regions of the world, while many of us easily pay 10 times or more for electricity that we consume in our homes. And it's examples like this that are void of context, right, that inspire many to believe that we can simply stop using fossil fuels altogether, right? But you should also trust that if there's a profit to be made, many companies would have already done so and bring this cheap supply to market. And therein lies the common frustration among many consumers, unable to comprehend why energy companies refuse to bring cheap renewables to our homes and continue to use expensive and polluting fossil fuels. And the answer to that is actually a simple one. Unless you stay right next to that remotely located solar PV farm and only consumes when the sun shines, then that 2 cents is merely a generation cost. A lot more systems and costs go into firming the power so that it can be used on demand, transmitting that power, incurring capital and operating costs, and electricity losses in the process. And if the distances are much further, such as having to cross oceans, then the electricity needs to be converted into a shippable form, typically a molecule, right, which will incur even more costs, efficiency losses from conversion and reconversions, storage and transport, so that the renewable electrons, or what's left of them, can finally be made available to us where we want it, when we want it, with expectations of reliability and convenience that many of us easily take for granted. So as you can see, supply chain costs can quickly add up to make a cheap renewable electron become a premium energy commodity by the time it arrives at our homes. We are all essentially consuming processed energy. And so it isn't quite as simple as looking at just at the generation costs. And in that regard, technology is just part of the solution, and greater effort needs to be focused on developing new supply chains and reducing their costs. A lot can be achieved by increasing demand for clean energy that can underpin the development of new large-scale infrastructure. That's always key to bringing down the costs. But high costs of clean energy in the initial phases prevents demand from even forming at a meaningful scale. And this is the chicken and egg issue that the clean energy industry is now grappling with. But there is a solution, which is to establish a meaningful price on CO2, either by taxing high carbon fuels or subsidizing low carbon fuels, or both. Now, this indirectly means that we will all have to pay more for clean energy, either directly or indirectly through the products and services we consume, or through the taxes we pay to fund the subsidies. We will all have to be willing to pay for more for energy if we want to decarbonize. Either we use less or we pay more. That is a sacrifice that each individual has to be responsible for. And this is the only way we will create the right market signals to incentivize the industry to provide the supply chain solutions required. So expecting a rapid and positive change without sacrifice is just wishful thinking. However, I think I must also mention this, that we should also consider that this will exacerbate the income inequality, as rising costs will surely disproportionately affect the lower income. And so it is equally important that we have the right societal mindset and political will to address these issues to ensure that we embark on a transition that is equitable as possible. Therefore, in conclusion, it is crucial to be clear of technology's role in addressing climate change. While technology is certainly an important part of the solution, it must be accompanied by policy, financial and societal changes, as well as individual actions and lifestyle changes to create the transformations necessary to combat climate change. And as the saying goes, perfect is the enemy of good. If we keep waiting for that perfect technology to miraculously solve all our climate problems without action or sacrifice on our part, we will never get anything done. Fortunately, time is not on our side, and with so many ideological narratives out there in the energy transition space, I hope this message will help cut through the clutter and bring clarity to the pragmatic mindset we must all have. And that's all I have for you today. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you found this video useful, I appreciate a thumbs up. But more importantly, I hope this has inspired you to think about what you can do as an individual, including helping to spread this message. Thanks for watching.